So another media oddity that occurred here in the last week or so is the coronation of the 2026 Super Bowl champion New England Patriots, based on their series of free agency moves. Um, so, not unprecedented when a team makes a number of noteworthy signings that they have a press conference, ownership, general manager, or whatever the executive's official title is, and coach, which the Patriots had. People had different feelings on it. I didn't think it was that out of place in the world of sports, but I think it was the timing of it was a little odd, and given the recent history of Patriots media, it was a little eyebrow raising. So my question for you all for our behind the keyboard segment is, if you have any specific thoughts on that Patriots press conference, you can share those. But I just kind of wanted to get your guys' feeling of the strangest, or maybe a press conference or a press event that struck you. You had a moment where you're like, huh, this is a little odd.
Well, I guess I'll go first. So the the main one I have is when I was covering the Bruins Cup run in 2019. The second round, they played the Blue Jackets, who were coached by John Tortorella at the time. And that series ended up going to 6 games. They won in game 6 in Columbus. The game 5 was a close game that the Bruins ended up winning, I think at the last second, or it might have been an overtime game. I forget the specifics at that point. But afterwards, it was one of the few, perhaps the only, like press conference settings or media settings I've been in with John Tortorella. And he didn't disappoint because he was pissed. And so I found, and I'll send this to you guys in the Zoom chat so you can read it for yourself. But I tweeted out the transcript at the time because he was just so irritated by everything. So the very first question was about the tight game and what they needed to open up offensively. And he says, "What's the question? We got some guys to play." And then after a couple more like ho hum hockey questions, he goes, "You know the answer. Don't ask stupid questions right now, guys. Ask me some questions that mean something, not that you have the answer to," which I actually think is a very good line and something that every journalist should remember. Stop asking stupid questions that you already know the answer to. I know sometimes you just have to get the quote, but so he's just irritated with everything. He was annoyed with the refs. He was annoyed with their play. Everything except for the energy they hated. For some reason, it's the funniest part of all of it. The second to last question he gets asked after all of this was about how Vladislav Gavrikov, who was playing in like his first NHL game, depth defenseman who they just threw in at the last second. Like, what'd you think of Gavrikov's play? And just goes, he was fine. He was fine. And that was it. And that was the press conference where he guaranteed they were going to be back in Boston for game 7. And then I don't believe they were. So that was probably the good one. I have another one was covering Celtics Media Day in 2019. You guys, I'm sure, have all covered media days where you basically just sit in a room with a podium and they just cycle players through all day, and you literally get like everyone. And so I remember one of the people was Max Strus, who has gone on to have a very good NBA career, but he was a camp invite for the Celtics. He was right out of DePaul. And no one thought we were getting Max Strus. Like no one thought that like they were going to bring the camp invites in. So he sits down and everyone's just kind of quiet. We're like, we don't know what the fuck to ask this guy or what the heck to ask this guy, pardon my language. And so he takes like one question, then eventually leaves. And so they get ready to bring in the next camp invite. And Brandon Chin, who was, I don't know if he still is, but he was like the head PR guy at the Celtics that time. Before they bring him in, he walks into the room and he's like, "Can you guys like please ask him a couple of questions?" And then they're like, "Okay, here's, Vincent Poirier or somebody like that." And yeah, they're just weird things like that. But I haven't been in like massive tirades, they are who we thought we were kind of ones.
Um, I, so Yeah, I have one. I will quickly say that, two that I wasn't around for, that I've heard from people who were there that are the weirdest ones were, um, in no particular order, the Rob Gronkowski motocross one with the helmet on. When there were all the questions about his retirement, and he took part in that motocross event at Gillette and did the whole thing with the helmet on and was going, I go vroom vroom, I'm on the bikes, and said nothing about his future. I heard people say that was a surreal experience. And then the other one is the sort of the main Deflate Gate press conference, the Mona Lisa veto one, where the people who cover the team that have talked to me about it said that number one, it was as busy as the media room has ever been, like just bursting at the seams, and that a lot of national reporters, or not a lot of national outlets, sent their reporters. So like there was a CNN guy there, and someone has told me that like that CNN person tried to ask Tom Brady a question, and he was like, what do you say to fans that now question your whether you do things the right way? And Brady was like, didn't really answer it, walked off the podium, and then that reporter stood up and said, "What about the kids, Tom? Tom, what about the children?" And like it was just that stuff. It was like national reporters sort of grandstanding and turning it into a circus. So I wish I was there for that. But my actual pick is Belichick's farewell thing with Kraft a year ago. Um, it was just weird on all levels. Like the fact it was in that big auditorium, and they presented it as something that it wasn't. He was fired. Like and Kraft admitted as much on that barbershop show, whatever the shop on HBO. He said I fired Bill Belichick. So there was no mutual parting of ways, but they both paraded out there, put on this sort of friendly vibe, like this is a good day, this is a positive day. And Belichick gave that speech where he was clearly uncomfortable, um, teared up for a brief second. Kraft spun it as a full positive. And I just was sitting there, and it was actually like a day after I found out that Nesson was cutting the Patriots beat reporter job. So I was in my own like, what is my future thing? But I was there anyway, and it was just surreal seeing it, like watching it, like wow, this is like the official end of that whole Patriots dynasty. They're trying to put this positive spin on it, but it's complete BS. I have it on pretty good authority that like at that same time that thing was happening, Gerard Mayo was down the hall shooting a video segment about being named the Patriots head coach. Like they filmed a segment for the Patriots video series about him being the coach, but he wasn't actually named the coach for a few days. And the reports about him being the coach were still a couple days away. But like they knew then, and they were filming the video. And at the same time, they're having the Belichick thing. Um, all of it, like it was. And then afterwards, like a lot of people trying to say like that hit all the right notes. It was perfect. That's the way it should be done. And I was sitting there like, am I crazy? Like that was the weirdest, fakest, most bizarre end to that 25-year run that I could have ever imagined. It was weird to be in there for that day.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
I
that is
have
a good one.
to I have to add a quick one that I forgot. This isn't a weird press conference story, but an unusual situation I ended up in was when Zdeno Chara signed with the Capitals, it was during COVID, so everything was being done over Zoom. So it actually worked out well because I was able to connect to his introductory press conference with the Capitals. Um, so, at that point on Zoom, once you get in, it's like webinar style. So you have to raise your hand, and then that basically forms a queue, and they're like, okay, these people answer. In most situations, I'm sure this is how it worked with like the Patriots and whatnot, is they kind of go in the like hierarchical order that you'll see of like, okay, the people have been here forever, they can ask the questions first or whatever. So I had a question or two that I was like, all right, if this doesn't get answered, I want it. So I go into the room and they start the thing and they're like, all right, use the raise hand function. So I use the raise hand function, and the first question goes to the Capitals team reporter. And the second question I think went to someone from Monumental. Um, and then after that, they called on me. And so And the first questions were just like, how do you feel about being in Washington? How do you feel about this and that? And there were so many like open storylines with this departure from the Bruins. And I figured every Bruins reporter has their hands in the air. So I was like, they'll probably call in Kevin Paul Dupont and Fluto and all these people first. And so I'm just sitting back and they're like, Logan Mullen, Nesson. And I was the third person. I was like, shit. And so I was like, well, I guess I have to ask him the line of questioning about like, why did you leave? Like, what happened with the Bruins? I forget what specifically I asked, but I was like, I'm gonna like get called for like the tertiary layer questions. And so I was just prepared with those. And then I was like, did the Bruins offer you enough? Like, I forget what it specifically was, but that's one
That,
of where I was personally uncomfortable because I was caught so off guard.
that's a good one. And I'll give one quick other one before Ben gives his. Is that this was it was either it was I think it was 2 years ago. It was the same summer where Jack Jones got caught with a gun at Logan Airport, and we hadn't talked to him since then. And then, remember that happened in May. It was right after OTAs, and so we're now in the preseason. And I think it was after the first preseason game, maybe the second. I can't remember, but regardless, it was after a night preseason game at Gillette, and we were finally getting Jack Jones for the first time since the gun thing, and uh, we didn't know much about what it was going to be. And so, a couple of people that are sort of the veterans on the beat got everyone together and basically in their own way said, there are only four, we only have time for 4 or 5 questions. These are the people going to ask them. Sorry to any other young reporter that wants to get in there. And in that situation, it's always Dan Roach first. Dan Roach always gets the first question. But we go down after the game onto the field while the game was winding down, and then it goes off, and we all head out towards the sideline, and Jack Jones comes across, and it was just like a madhouse. It's kind of funny looking back on it because ultimately it wasn't that big a deal, but we just hadn't gotten to talk to him, right? And the scrum got so big, and the cameramen were fighting so hard to get a shot. One of them but had their shot blocked by, I won't say the name, but a veteran and highly respected Patriots reporter, and the cameraman kind of like gave him like a get the hell out of the way guy, or like was kind of a jerk about it, and that reporter turned around and gave the I've been here for years, like get the hell out of here, like they started fighting with each other, and Jack Jones took like 4 or 5 questions and got out of there. But that one was weird because it was just like the urgency around it, and everyone making a huge deal, and how big the scrum got, and how much people were jockeying for position, and the fact that like half the beat got like basically told without being told, like you're not allowed to ask a question in this thing. It was weird.
I'm sorry, we will get to Ben's, but that just reminded me because I covered exactly one game, one Red Sox game at Fenway Park in my time with Nesson, and it was the Joe
One more
Kelly
than
fight
me.
game. Shut up. You cry so much about that. Um, it was the Joe Kelly fight game. And so I remember going into the locker room after that, and the scrum, they stood Joe Kelly up. They should have just done a press conference, but they stood Joe Kelly up in front of the TVs. Like everyone swarms over there. And I remember just being like, I'm hanging out at the back of this. Like, there's going to be a transcript. This audio is going to be everywhere. Like, whatever. There's a cameraman behind me who's like shoving around. He's like trying to get his camera up. There's like so many people. He's freaking out. And so finally he just goes and he grabs some chair nearby and starts standing on a chair. And a Red Sox PR person is like, and it's like a leather chair. They're like, hey, like you can't be standing on that. Like get off the chair. And he looks down at the person. He goes, make me. And so, and so the person makes him. The person starts pulling the chair away. And so just know that the entire Joe Kelly press conference, while he's got like the half black eye, his shirt's torn up, he's standing right there. There's some like probably, WHDH cameraman who's getting yanked off a chair by a member of Red Sox PR, like going back and forth with them. So that was a weird one. I was just thinking about the subjects on the podium, but yeah, I've seen insane stuff from
That's fun,
what's
and
actually happening in the scrum.
that's fun. And keeping with the bit of cutting off Ben before he can give his, I'm gonna so I'll give one quick one. And this was at MetLife Stadium after a Patriots Jets game a couple years ago, and it was the game where Mac Jones hit Sauce Gardner in the nuts. And I was in like the Jets media area, like the right around where the locker room was, where Sauce Gardner said that, and I heard it, and I was like, oh, and I before anyone had time to tweet it out or anything, and I like as soon as he finished saying it, I like dipped out and like basically wind sprinted over to the Patriots media room before Mac Jones got off the podium, and I just like hastily like got around the corner, ducked my head, stuck my head around the corner. I'm like, Mac, Sauce Gardner just said you hit him in the groin. Do you have anything to say about that? just like I just like flew in there to ask about him hitting him in the nuts, and then as soon as he finished, I dipped back out and like ran right back across the other side. I just remember hastily going back and forth to ask people about Mac Jones maybe hitting Sauce Gardner in the balls. And I
I
just
hate to
remember
gas
at one
you
point
up.
thinking like, what is my job? Like, what am I doing?
I hate to gas you up, but that's actually very good boots on the ground journalism. Like
Yeah.
me talking last week about like the lack of necessity of beat writing because people just want to go and write a game story. It's like that would be justifiable of like that is why you sent someone there because he heard something in the visiting locker room and then efforted to go and get it, a response right away. So
Well, we weren't able to ever get Mac Jones in the locker room. We were
yeah.
only going to get him at the podium. So like that was the one shot to get a comment on it until the following Wednesday, And so like at that time, I'm like, I got to do stories that justify being sent here in the first place. So, you know,
Yeah.
that's an
Good
easy
for
one.
you, Cody.
Yeah. I was like,
You would have got a pat on the
that'll
back
make
if
Ben
I was
happy.
your editor.
Good,
Yeah.
good on you.
All right, Ben, anything to add?
I
And then
guess not.
the
No, those are
following
some
week,
pretty good stories.
the following week, I probably did 15 stories with the phrase sack tap in the headline. The Mac Jones sack, the Sauce Gardner sack tap. Bill Belichick offers candid take on Sauce Gardner sack tap.
Not to be confused with the Brian Burns ankle turn or
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, mine was also sort of a what am I doing here moment. It was the press conference after the Celtics Nets trade, where the Celtics, uh, it was a press conference with Marshawn Brooks, Keith Bogans, and Chris Humphries. I think that those were the only three players.
Legends of the game.
Legends of the game. And as you can imagine, that was a very, very odd press conference because everyone knew what this was. Everyone was aware that it was not going to be much permanent or illustrious moment in the history of the Celtics. I don't believe that Chris Humphries and Keith Bogans like even like got dressed up. Like I think that they were just like wearing normal clothes. They're very gracious about it, especially Keith Bogans. He was a pro. He was very clear that like he did not want to be there. And he's kind of the cautionary tale that like he got a good contract. He was on a good contract for a Keith Bogans, and it ended up being a curse though because once they made that move, the speculation was, oh, like Bogans and Humphreys are gonna be moved like almost right away to a contender or somebody worthwhile, and Marshawn Brooks is kind of like the future piece that they got. I remember they could not move Bogans for the longest time because his contract was too good for him, and no one wanted to pay Keith Bogans that money. So it was really tough, and Marshawn Brooks just again, I know he was very young at the time, but Humphreys and Bogans were professionals about it. In the press conference, Marshawn Brooks was not. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world, and that is the way he ended up looking throughout his NBA career, that he wanted to be anywhere else in the world, but having to deal with this. And not surprisingly, he did not turn out to be the centerpiece of the next great Celtics team.
Was Gerald Wallace there? I'm looking back at that trade because they had Chris Joseph and Gerald Wallace too, and I remember hating Gerald Wallace with the Celtics. Like for some reason, Gerald Wallace was always the one who was talking after those games, and I remember listening to Gerald Wallace that year and being like, "What is this guy's like goal?" Like, God, I remember he always got on my nerves.
Gerald Wallace must have been there, but I don't remember interviewing him there, but he must have been there, or maybe he wasn't. I don't know, but I distinctly remember the other three.
He sucked for the Celtics too, didn't he? I remember like there was some excitement, like he
Gerald
was so
Wallace.
good for the Bobcats, but like
Yeah.
he wasn't good.
Oh,
at
he
all
was
for the Celtics.
amazing for the Bobcats. I love Bobcats era Gerald Wallace.
Yeah.
Awesome player.
Who were some other great Bobcats from those teams? I think Kwame Brown was not part
I
of
mean,
those
Tyson
teams.
Chandler. Technically Raymond Felton was on those teams, but I don't think
Oh,
he was
yeah.
ever awesome. He was. Emeka Okafor.
That's right. He
Yeah.
was okay.
Steven Jackson.
Steven Jackson. Yeah, that was a great video game team. Tremendous.
Late career Alonzo Mourning, Raymond Felton. I don't know. Were they really on those? I'm just Googling it, right? I don't
I don't
remember
think
Alonzo
Alonzo
Mourning
Mourning was on the
Bobcats.
Bobcats. No, he was.
That's
he,
what
he
that's what
retired.
Google's AI is saying, and I think it's wrong.
No, he retired a Heat, or whatever you call it, a singular Heat. He retired a degree.
Do you think we could do an hour podcast on the Charlotte Bobcats if we had to?
Certainly.
I mean, I could do plenty of UConn content on that with Emeka Okafor being the centerpiece there. So I'm still really locked into the 2013 Celtics here. I didn't realize Keith Bogan's only played 6 games. Like I knew the him being untradeable part. Like you know who he's a good example of is Solomon Hill. Like Solomon Hill for 2 years, like rookie deal, was a useful player, and he might have been one of the guys who benefited from that weird 2016 free agency thing where like Timothy Mozgov was getting an insane contract and stuff like that. But I just remember, yeah, him flaming out kind of quick.
So let that be a lesson to you. You know, you get that bag, but you could also get stuck on the 2013 Boston Celtics and have nowhere to go.
Well, you know, I'd love for to our point, let's really tie a bow on this. Let's hear Drew Carter and Scout call that Celtics team.
That's what yeah. No way.
Absolutely not.
Gerald Green wasn't on that team, was he?
He might have come back.
No, he was.
No. Gerald Green did end up coming back.
Yeah, I didn't know
in
if
the
that was
2010s. Yes.
Yeah, he was 2016. That was actually
okay.
the year that like Loki covered the Celtics for WEI. It was 16 because he had come back from Russia and he was during actually the media day, during his media day press conference. I remember him saying the moment he realized he really wanted to get back to the NBA was he was playing in Russia. He was like, I'm having soup for dinner every night because I don't like the food and I'm living in Russia. And so he's like, I just wanted to get back to the NBA. And he ended up back at the team that got him there in the first place.
Little did he know things actually went well for him.
He was a yeah, he was a useful player. And then I think he had like a decent run with the Rockets. Like he had a nice end to his career.